Elijah Reed has learned the hard way that most women say they're fine with his 7-year-old son Caleb's autism, until they experience the reality of meltdowns, routines, and a child who experiences the world differently. When his cousin sets him up with preschool art teacher Maya Lawrence, he decides to skip the pretense and bring Caleb along to dinner, expecting her to politely disappear like all the others. But Maya doesn't flinch. She crouches down to Caleb's level, hums along with his quiet sounds, and sees the beautiful, brilliant boy behind the diagnosis. This is a story about unconditional love, second chances, and discovering that the most extraordinary families are often the ones that don't look traditional at all. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. Elijah Reed stared at his phone and frowned at the text message from his cousin Angela. "Trust me, Elijah, you'll like this one. She's different." Different. How many times had he heard that before? 5, 6. He'd lost count of the women who claimed they were fine with his situation until they actually experienced it. Elijah looked across the living room where his 7-year-old son Caleb sat on the floor, lining up his toy cars in perfect order by color. The boy hadn't spoken a word all morning, but that wasn't unusual. Some days were like that. "What do you think, buddy?" Elijah asked, knowing he wouldn't get an answer. "Should Daddy try one more time?" Caleb continued arranging his cars, seemingly oblivious to the question. Elijah sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair. At 34, he was successful beyond what most people could imagine. His tech company had made him a millionaire by 30. He lived in a beautiful home in an exclusive neighborhood. He had everything money could buy, but he was lonely. After Caleb's mother, Jessica, had walked out when their son was diagnosed with autism, Elijah had thrown himself into two things: his business and his son. Dating had been an afterthought, and a painful one at that. "She said she didn't sign up for this," Jessica had told him the day she left, her suitcases already packed. "I wanted a normal child, Elijah, a normal life. I can't do this." Those words had cut deeper than any knife could, not just for him, but for Caleb, who deserved better. Elijah looked at his phone again. What made his cousin think this woman, Maya Lawrence, would be any different? He scrolled through the information Angela had sent. 28 years old, preschool art teacher, pretty smile in her photo. He was about to text Angela back with his standard excuse when an idea struck him. A test, a way to know for sure right from the start. "Hey, Caleb," he said gently. "How would you like to go to dinner with Daddy tonight?" Maya Lawrence checked her appearance one last time in her compact mirror. Her dark curls framed her face softly, and she'd kept her makeup minimal, just enough to enhance her warm brown eyes and full lips. She smoothed down her yellow sundress and took a deep breath. Blind dates weren't usually her thing, but Angela had been persistent, talking up her cousin Elijah like he was God's gift to womankind. Successful, handsome, kind. According to Angela, he was the total package. Maya had heard that before. In her experience, men who seemed perfect on paper often had hidden flaws, or they took one look at her job as a preschool teacher and decided she wasn't ambitious enough for them. Still, she'd agreed to meet him at this cozy Italian restaurant. What was one dinner, after all? She spotted him the moment she walked in. Angela had shown her his picture, but it didn't do him justice. Elijah Reed was tall, with broad shoulders, rich brown skin, and a face that belonged on a magazine cover. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt that emphasized his athletic build, but he wasn't alone. Sitting beside him was a small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. The child was looking down at a toy car in his hands, spinning its wheels over and over. Maya hesitated only for a second before approaching the table. Was this some kind of setup? Had Angela forgotten to mention Elijah had a child? Elijah stood when he saw her, his expression guarded. "Maya, I'm Elijah. Nice to meet you," she said with a genuine smile, but her eyes moved to the boy. Instead of asking questions, she crouched down to the child's level. "Hey, love, that's a pretty fast car you've got there." The boy didn't look up, but his fingers slowed on the toy's wheels. Maya didn't push. She straightened and took the seat across from them. "I'm glad to meet you both." Something flickered across Elijah's face. Surprise, maybe even shock. He seemed to be waiting for her to ask why the child was there, but Maya simply opened her menu. "Angela told me this place has amazing lasagna," she said casually. "She's right," Elijah replied, his voice slightly strained. "Caleb usually gets the spaghetti, plain with butter." "Right, buddy?" The boy, Caleb, nodded almost imperceptibly, still focused on his car. "A classic choice," Maya said warmly. "One of my students only eats white foods. Pasta with butter is his favorite too." Elijah's eyebrows rose. Your students? I teach preschool art, Maya explained. 4 and 5-year-olds mostly. Every child has their preferences. The waiter came to take their orders. Maya noticed how Elijah specified exactly how Caleb's spaghetti should be prepared. No sauce, butter on the side. Noodles not too soft but not too firm. The waiter wrote it all down without comment. As they waited for their food, Maya talked about her day at school, how one little boy would only paint with blue no matter what the assignment, how another child needed her food separated by color on the plate. It's amazing how each kid has their own way of seeing the world, she said. I try to meet them where they are, you know. Caleb began to rock slightly in his seat, a gentle back-and-forth motion. Maya didn't stare or comment. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small pad of paper and a pen. Would you like to draw while we wait for the food? She asked, placing them on the table near Caleb without forcing them on him. After a moment, Caleb set down his car and took the pen. He began drawing precise, straight lines across the paper. Elijah watched his son, then looked at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're good with him, he said quietly. Maya shrugged. I just try to pay attention. Their food arrived, and Maya noticed how Caleb stopped drawing immediately, setting the pen down exactly parallel to the edge of the table. He inspected his spaghetti carefully before taking a bite. So, Elijah said as they ate, Angela didn't tell you I'd be bringing my son? No, Maya admitted, but I'm glad you did. He seems like a wonderful boy. He is. Elijah's voice softened. He's also autistic, does that bother you? Maya looked him straight in the eyes. Why would it? Something in Elijah's expression changed, like a wall beginning to crumble. Most women say it doesn't, at first. I'm not most women, Maya said simply. And I'm not saying that to impress you. I grew up with a cousin who's on the spectrum. Plus I work with all kinds of children every day. Every child is different. Every child is perfect exactly as they are. Caleb hummed softly as he ate, a quiet, repetitive sound. Without thinking, Maya hummed back, matching his tone. The boy paused, then continued his hum at a slightly different pitch. Maya followed. It became a gentle back and forth like a conversation without words. Elijah watched them, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth, his eyes wide. Sorry, Maya said, realizing what she was doing. Sometimes I just... No, Elijah interrupted. Don't apologize, it's just... He seemed at a loss for words. You're the first person who's ever done that with him besides me. They finished their meal with comfortable conversation. Maya told stories about her classroom adventures, making Elijah laugh more than once. She didn't pry about Caleb's mother or ask invasive questions about his condition. Instead, she simply included him, offering him a crayon when she saw him eyeing her purse, where she always kept a small pack. When it was time to leave, Elijah paid the bill despite Maya's protests. This was nice, he said as they walked to the parking lot. Really nice. I had a good time too, Maya replied honestly. Then something unexpected happened. Caleb, who had been walking slightly behind them, reached out and took Maya's hand. His small fingers wrapped around hers tentatively. Elijah stopped walking, staring at their joined hands with astonishment. Is this okay? Maya asked Caleb softly, giving him every chance to pull away if he wanted. The boy nodded, his eyes still on the ground. He never does that, Elijah whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He never initiates touch with strangers. I guess I'm not a stranger anymore, Maya said with a smile. They reached her car first. Maya gently disengaged her hand from Caleb's, crouching down to his level again. Thank you for having dinner with me, Caleb. I really liked your drawings. The boy didn't respond verbally, but he looked at her face for a split second before returning his gaze to the ground. She straightened and turned to Elijah, who was watching her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. Thank you for dinner, she said. Maya. Elijah hesitated, then seemed to make up his mind about something. I need to be honest with you. I brought Caleb tonight on purpose. As a test. A test? To see how you'd react to him. His eyes held a hint of shame. I've been through this before. Women who say all the right things, who pretend to be okay with him being autistic. Then they slowly pull away when they realize what it actually means day to day. Maya nodded slowly. I understand why you'd be cautious. You don't have to pretend to be okay with all this, Elijah continued, his voice low and serious. I've learned how that story ends. Maya looked at him, then at Caleb, who was tracing the pattern on her car door with one finger. I'm not pretending, she said firmly but gently. I was raised by a mother who never looked away when things got messy. You don't scare me, Elijah, and neither does your son. Something shifted in Elijah's expression, a softening, a spark of hope. he seemed afraid to acknowledge. "Would it be okay if I called you?" he asked. Maya smiled. "I'd like that." As she drove home later, Maya thought about the evening, about Elijah's guarded eyes that had gradually warmed as the night went on, about Caleb's silent communication and the moment he'd taken her hand. She hadn't expected any of this when she'd agreed to Angela's setup, but somehow it felt right, like the beginning of something important. The next morning, Elijah couldn't stop thinking about Maya, the way she'd crouched down to Caleb's level without hesitation, the way she'd hummed with him, drawn with him, held his hand. No awkwardness, no forced smiles or pitying looks. "She's different," he murmured to himself, echoing Angela's text. Caleb was at the kitchen table, methodically arranging his cereal pieces in a spiral pattern. "What did you think of Maya?" Elijah asked, not really expecting an answer. To his surprise, Caleb looked up. "Nice," he said quietly, before returning to his cereal. Elijah nearly dropped his coffee mug. Caleb spoke when he wanted to, but rarely offered opinions about people. That single word felt like a miracle. He picked up his phone and found Maya's number. It was too early to call, but he could text. "Thank you for last night," he typed. "Caleb and I really enjoyed meeting you." He hesitated, then added, "Would you like to join us for a picnic this weekend? Saturday at Oak Park around noon?" He sent the message before he could overthink it. To his surprise, the response came almost immediately. "I'd love that. Should I bring anything?" Elijah smiled. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd found someone who could accept both him and his son exactly as they were. What he didn't know was that this picnic would be just the beginning of a journey that would change all three of their lives forever. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, sunny but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves in Oak Park. Elijah spread a large blue blanket on the grass, careful to choose a spot under a shady tree, away from the crowded playground. "Is this good, buddy?" he asked Caleb, who was clutching his favorite toy car tightly. Caleb nodded, his eyes scanning the park anxiously. New places were always challenging for him, but they'd been to this park before, and Elijah had deliberately chosen their usual spot. "Maya will be here soon," Elijah said, trying to sound casual even as his own stomach fluttered with nerves. He hadn't felt this way about a woman in years, maybe ever. He'd packed Caleb's favorite foods, peanut butter sandwiches with the crusts cut off, apple slices, and the specific brand of juice boxes Caleb preferred. He'd also brought a few art supplies, remembering how Caleb had drawn with Maya at the restaurant. "There she is," Elijah said, spotting Maya walking toward them on the path. She wore jeans and a simple green t-shirt, her curls pulled back in a ponytail. She carried a small cooler and had a tote bag slung over her shoulder. "Hi," she called, waving as she approached. "Sorry if I'm a little late." "You're right on time," Elijah said, standing to greet her. He wanted to hug her but settled for a smile instead, unsure where they stood. Maya didn't hesitate. She set down her things and crouched in front of Caleb, who was sitting cross-legged on the blanket. "Hi, Caleb. I brought something I thought you might like." She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small box. "May I show you?" Caleb didn't look at her directly but nodded. Maya opened the box to reveal a set of colorful toy cars, each one slightly different from the others. "These belong to my cousin," she explained. "He's grown up now, but he loved these when he was your age. I thought maybe you could add them to your collection if you want." Caleb stared at the cars, his eyes wide. Slowly he reached out and touched one, a shiny red sports car with black stripes. "Red," he said softly. "That's right," Maya smiled. "It's red like a fire truck." Elijah watched in amazement as Caleb carefully lifted the red car and examined it, turning it over in his hands. Then, to Elijah's shock, his son looked directly at Maya. "Thank you," he said clearly before returning his attention to the car. Maya's smile widened, but she didn't make a big deal of the moment. She simply said, "You're welcome, Caleb," and moved to sit on the blanket, giving him space. Elijah could barely speak. Caleb had spoken directly to Maya, twice now, and had even made eye contact. It had taken his own mother months to get that kind of response. "That was," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "He's a wonderful boy," Maya said simply, unpacking her cooler. "I brought some strawberries and homemade cookies. I hope that's okay." Elijah nodded, still processing what he'd just witnessed. "It's more than okay, it's perfect." The picnic went better than Elijah could have imagined. Caleb sat quietly, lining up his new cars with the one he'd brought, occasionally making soft engine noises. He ate his sandwich exactly as he always did, first the right half, then the left, with 3 sips of juice in between. Maya didn't bat an eye at his routine. She chatted easily with Elijah about her work, asking questions about his business, laughing at his stories. She had a warm laugh that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "So, what exactly does your company do?" she asked, biting into a strawberry. "We develop educational software," Elijah explained, "specifically for children with different learning needs." "Really?" Maya looked genuinely interested. "That's amazing." Elijah shrugged modestly. "It started because of Caleb. When he was diagnosed, I couldn't find many resources that worked for him, so I created some. That's how the best ideas happen," Maya said. "You saw a need and filled it. What about you?" Elijah asked. "Have you always wanted to teach?" Maya nodded. "Since I was little. My mom was a teacher, too, high school English. I preferred the little ones, though. They're so honest, you know? No pretense. Unlike adults," Elijah said with a knowing smile. "Exactly." Maya glanced at Caleb, who was now drawing patterns in a small notebook he'd brought. Children like Caleb especially. "What you see is what you get. Not everyone appreciates that," Elijah said quietly. Maya's expression grew serious. Their loss. Something about the simple conviction in her voice made Elijah's heart turn over in his chest. This woman was real, genuinely, refreshingly real. After they'd eaten, Maya pulled some bubbles from her tote bag. "Would it be okay if I blew some bubbles? Some kids love them, others don't." "He usually likes them," Elijah said, touched by her thoughtfulness in asking first. Maya opened the bottle and blew a stream of bubbles that danced in the breeze. Caleb looked up, his eyes following their path through the air. A small smile appeared on his face, rare and precious. To Elijah's delight, Caleb set down his cars and moved closer to Maya. She handed him the bubble wand, showing him how to dip it and blow gently. His first attempt sent droplets flying, but he didn't get frustrated. He tried again and again until he produced a single perfect bubble that floated up toward the tree branches. "You did it!" Maya cheered softly. Caleb's smile grew just a fraction wider. They spent nearly 3 hours in the park. As the afternoon wore on, Caleb grew tired, as Elijah had expected. When his son began rocking more intensely, Elijah knew it was time to go. "We should probably head home," he told Maya. "Caleb needs his routine." "Of course," Maya said without hesitation. She helped pack up their things, careful to let Caleb gather his own cars and put them back in the box himself. As they walked toward the parking lot, Caleb surprised them both again by taking Maya's hand, just as he had outside the restaurant. But this time he took his father's hand too, walking between them. Elijah's eyes met Maya's over Caleb's head, and the connection he felt in that moment was almost overwhelming. It was as if they were already a family. At Maya's car, she knelt down once more to say goodbye to Caleb. "Thank you for sharing your picnic with me," she said, "and for showing me how to draw those cool patterns. Maybe next time you can teach me more." Caleb nodded seriously, his eyes on her chin rather than her eyes, but his focus was unmistakable. When she stood to say goodbye to Elijah, he found himself struggling to find the right words. "This was," he began. "Wonderful," she finished for him with a smile. "Yes," he agreed. "Wonderful." There was a moment of awkward silence before Maya spoke again. "I'm free next weekend too," she said. "If you both wanted to do something." Elijah felt relief wash over him. "We'd like that, very much." As he drove home with Caleb, Elijah couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, he felt hope blooming in his chest. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd found someone who could truly accept his son and him, exactly as they were. Over the next few weeks, Maya became a regular part of their lives. After the picnic came a trip to the Children's Museum, where Maya knew exactly which exhibits would be too overwhelming for Caleb and which he would enjoy. Then a quiet afternoon at Elijah's house, where Maya helped Caleb create a magnificent art project with painted handprints. With each meeting, Caleb became more comfortable with her presence. He still had his difficult moments, a meltdown at the museum when a group of noisy children rushed past, a day when he refused to speak at all. But Maya never flinched, never looked overwhelmed or ready to run. Instead, she seemed to intuitively understand what Caleb needed. Space sometimes, quiet reassurance at others, and occasionally the freedom to express his frustration without judgment. One evening, after Caleb had gone to bed, Elijah and Maya sat on his back porch, watching the sunset and sipping glasses of wine. "How did you get so good at this?" Elijah asked. "With Caleb, I mean." Maya smiled. "I told you about my cousin, right? Alex. He's 10 years older than me, and he's on the spectrum too. Growing up, I watched how people treated him, like he was broken somehow. But my aunt never saw him that way. She always said he was perfect exactly as he was, just wired differently. She took a sip of her wine before continuing. I guess I learned from her, and then in my teaching, I've worked with all kinds of kids. Every child has their own way of experiencing the world. Some just have more intense experiences than others. Elijah nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Caleb's mother didn't see it that way. Maya was quiet, giving him space to continue if he wanted to. Jessica left 6 months after his diagnosis, Elijah said, the words still painful to speak aloud. She said she couldn't handle it, that it wasn't what she signed up for, as if our son was a defective product she could return. I'm sorry, Maya said softly. That must have been incredibly hard for both of you. It was. It still is sometimes. Elijah looked toward the darkened window of Caleb's bedroom. He doesn't ask about her much anymore. I don't know if that's better or worse. You've done an amazing job with him, Maya said. He's a wonderful, bright, sensitive boy. Anyone who couldn't see that was missing out on something beautiful. Elijah turned to look at her, struck once again by how genuine she was. In the soft glow of the porch light, her face was open and kind, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that moved him profoundly. Maya, he said, setting down his glass. I need to tell you something. She waited, her expression curious but patient. These past few weeks have been incredible. You're incredible. And I'm terrified. Terrified? She repeated, her brow furrowing. Yes. He took a deep breath. Because I'm starting to have feelings for you. Real feelings. And every time that's happened before, it's ended with Caleb getting hurt. Maya reached across the space between them and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and steady against his. I understand why you're scared, she said. But Elijah, I'm not going anywhere. I care about Caleb, and I care about you too. A lot. The sincerity in her voice made his heart race. You do? She nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. I do. More than I expected to, honestly. But I need you to know something too. What's that? I don't make promises lightly. When I say I'm not going anywhere, I mean it. I'm in this, whatever this is becoming, with both of you. Not just with you, not just with Caleb. With both of you. Elijah felt something shift inside him, like a locked door finally swinging open. Before he could overthink it, he leaned forward and kissed her, a gentle, questioning kiss that asked rather than demanded. Maya responded immediately, her lips soft against his, her hand squeezing his fingers. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. I've been wanting to do that since our picnic, Elijah admitted. What took you so long? Maya teased, her eyes sparkling. He laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. Fear, mostly, but you make it hard to stay afraid. They talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing, about their childhoods, their dreams, their favorite movies and books. Maya told him about her parents, both teachers who had instilled in her a love of learning and a deep respect for all kinds of minds. Elijah shared stories of Caleb as a baby, before the diagnosis and after, the challenges and the triumphs. When Maya finally said she needed to go home, it was well past midnight. Elijah walked her to her car, their fingers intertwined. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked, not wanting to let go. I have school until 3, she said. But after that, yes. He kissed her again, longer this time, trying to convey with actions what he wasn't quite ready to say with words. Good night, Elijah, she whispered against his lips. Good night, Maya. As he watched her drive away, Elijah felt like a teenager again, giddy, nervous, full of possibility. But there was something else too, something deeper and more substantial than just attraction. It felt like the beginning of something real, something lasting. The next day, Elijah couldn't focus on work. His thoughts kept drifting to Maya, her smile, her laugh, the feel of her lips against his. He had an important meeting with potential investors, but he found himself checking his phone every few minutes, hoping for a text from her. Mr. Reed, his assistant said, poking her head into his office. The Andersons are here. Right, thank you, Elijah said, quickly putting his phone away and straightening his tie. Show them in. The meeting went well, despite his distraction. The investors were impressed with his company's latest software, a program designed to help nonverbal children communicate through pictures and simple phrases. It was inspired by Caleb's early struggles with speech, though Elijah didn't mention that during the presentation. As soon as the Andersons left, Elijah checked his phone again. There was a message from Maya. Can't stop thinking about last night. Can't wait to see you later. How's 4 at your place? Elijah smiled as he typed his reply. Perfect. Caleb will be thrilled. So will I. He wrapped up his work early and headed home to prepare. He didn't want anything fancy, Maya wasn't that kind of woman, but he wanted the evening to be special. He stopped at the grocery store for ingredients to make his one decent meal, pasta with grilled chicken and vegetables. Caleb would eat the plain pasta with butter, as always. He picked up Caleb from his specialized school program at 3:30. His son seemed to be having a good day, the aide reported. He'd participated in group time and had even helped another child with a puzzle. He's been asking when he could see Miss Maya again, the aide said with a smile. That's new. Elijah felt a surge of pride and hope. She's coming over today, actually. That explains the smile he's been wearing. On the drive home, Elijah glanced in the rearview mirror at his son, who was looking out the window with unusual interest. Maya's coming over soon, buddy. Are you excited? Caleb nodded, his fingers tapping a rhythm on his knee. She brings colors, he said softly. Elijah wasn't sure exactly what his son meant, but the sentiment touched him deeply. Maya did bring color to both their lives. At home, Elijah started dinner preparations, while Caleb arranged his cars on the coffee table, a ritual he performed each day after school. The doorbell rang precisely at 4 a.m. Caleb looked up, his eyes bright. Maya, he said, and stood up from his cars, something he rarely did before finishing his arrangement. Elijah opened the door to find Maya standing there with a bright smile and a small gift bag. Hi, she said, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. Hi, he replied, suddenly feeling shy himself. Before either of them could say anything else, Caleb appeared at Elijah's side. Maya, he said again, his voice stronger than usual. Hi, Caleb, she said warmly, crouching down to his level as she always did. I brought you something. She held out the gift bag. Caleb took it carefully and peered inside. He pulled out a small set of special markers, the kind that changed colors as you drew. Color changes, he said with obvious delight. That's right, Maya nodded. I thought we could try them together, if you want. Caleb nodded eagerly, already heading toward the kitchen table where he usually did his drawing. Maya stood up, meeting Elijah's eyes with a smile. Hi, she said again. This time he didn't hesitate. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, breathing in the subtle floral scent of her shampoo. I missed you, he murmured against her hair. It's only been a day, she laughed softly. Too long, he replied, only half joking. They joined Caleb at the table, watching as he experimented with the new markers, his face showing rare animation as the colors changed before his eyes. These are amazing, Elijah said, trying one himself. Where did you find them? At the art supply store near my school, Maya explained. I use them with my students sometimes. They're especially good for kids who like predictable patterns, but also enjoy surprises. Elijah shook his head in wonder. You're always thinking about what will work for him. Maya shrugged, but her eyes were serious when she replied, That's what you do when you care about someone. You try to understand their world. The evening passed in comfortable harmony. They ate dinner together, Maya praising Elijah's cooking skills, while Caleb methodically worked his way through his plain pasta. Afterward, they all drew pictures with the new markers, Caleb creating intricate patterns, while Elijah and Maya attempted to outdo each other with increasingly silly drawings that made Caleb giggle, a sound that was still rare enough to feel miraculous. When it was time for Caleb's bath and bedtime routine, Maya offered to read him a story, while Elijah cleaned up the kitchen. He could hear her voice from the bathroom, making different sounds for each character in Caleb's favorite book about trains. Later, as Elijah tucked his son into bed, Caleb looked unusually thoughtful. What is it, buddy? Elijah asked. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then said clearly, Maya stays. Elijah's heart skipped a beat. So I want Maya to stay? To be our friend? Caleb nodded seriously. Stay forever. Tears pricked at Elijah's eyes. I'd like that too, Caleb. I'd like that very much. When he returned to the living room, Maya was sitting on the couch looking through a photo album she'd found on the bookshelf. Sorry, she said, closing it quickly. I didn't mean to snoop. It's fine, Elijah said, sitting beside her. No secrets there, just some old pictures. Maya reopened the album, pointing to a photo of baby Caleb. He was beautiful. Still is. Yes, Elijah agreed, then hesitated before adding, he just said something interesting. Oh? He said, Maya stays. And then, stay forever. Maya's eyes widened. He said that? Those exact words? Elijah nodded. It's the most complex sentence he's said in months, and definitely the first time he's ever expressed a preference about someone in our lives. Maya was quiet for a moment, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Elijah said, taking her hand. Just know that he feels the same way I do. We both want you in our lives, Maya, for as long as you want to be here. She squeezed his hand, her voice soft but sure, when she replied, Then I guess I'm staying, because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. As the evening deepened into night, they sat close together on the couch, talking softly, sharing gentle kisses, building the foundation of something neither of them had dared to hope for just a few weeks ago. What neither of them knew was that their newfound happiness would soon face an unexpected challenge, one that would test the strength of their growing bond in ways they couldn't imagine. 2 months had passed since that first dinner, and Maya had become a fixture in the Reed household. She spent most weekends with Elijah and Caleb, and many weeknights too. Her colorful artwork hung on the refrigerator alongside Caleb's drawings. Her favorite mug, a handmade ceramic piece with paint splatters, had a permanent spot in the kitchen cabinet. Elijah couldn't remember ever being this happy. Each morning he woke up excited about the day ahead, especially if it included Maya. Even his employees had commented on the change in him. "You're smiling more," his assistant had remarked just yesterday. "It looks good on you, boss." Caleb was thriving too. His teachers reported more verbal communication, more engagement with other children. At home, he'd started asking for Maya time each day, usually for drawing or reading together. The bond between them grew stronger every week. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and Elijah was in his office when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. "Elijah Reed speaking." There was a pause, then a voice he hadn't heard in almost 3 years. "Elijah, it's Jessica." His blood ran cold. Caleb's mother, the woman who had walked out on them when things got tough. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice tight. "I need to see you," she said. "And Caleb, I'm back in town." Elijah gripped the phone harder. "Why now?" "It's been 3 years, Jessica." "I know." Her voice softened. "I've been in therapy. I've changed. I want to make things right." "Make things right?" Elijah repeated incredulously. "You abandoned your son when he needed you most. How exactly do you plan to make that right?" "Please, Elijah," Jessica said. "Just meet with me, hear me out, then decide." Every instinct told him to refuse, to protect Caleb from more hurt. But he knew that someday his son might ask why he never gave his mother a second chance. "Fine," he said finally. "Tomorrow, coffee shop on Main Street, just you and me. I'm not bringing Caleb until I know what this is really about." "Thank you," Jessica said, relief evident in her voice. "I'll see you at noon." "Noon," he confirmed, then ended the call. Elijah sat at his desk, his mind racing. Why now? What did Jessica really want? And how would this affect his relationship with Maya? Maya. He needed to tell her about this. No secrets. That had been their agreement from the start. He texted her, "Need to talk tonight after Caleb's asleep. Nothing bad between us, I promise. Just something I need to share." Her reply came quickly. "Of course. I'll bring dessert." That evening, after tucking Caleb into bed, Elijah found Maya in the kitchen, arranging slices of cheesecake on plates. "Your favorite," she said with a smile. "Now what's going on? You've been quiet all evening." Elijah took a deep breath. "Jessica called today." Maya's hands stilled. "Caleb's mother." He nodded. "She's back in town. Wants to see us. See him." Maya set down the dessert knife carefully. "What did you say?" "I agreed to meet her tomorrow. Just me, not Caleb. I need to find out what she really wants before I let her anywhere near him." Maya was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "How do you feel about it?" "Angry. Confused." Elijah ran a hand through his hair. "Mostly I'm worried about Caleb. What if she comes back just long enough for him to get attached, then leaves again? I can't let him go through that." Maya moved around the counter and took his hands in hers. "You're a good father, Elijah. You'll make the right decision for Caleb." "What would you do?" he asked. She considered the question seriously. "I'd meet her, like you're planning to, hear what she has to say. People can change sometimes, but I'd be very careful about involving Caleb until I was sure her intentions were genuine." Elijah nodded, grateful for her balanced perspective. "That's my plan." "Do you want me to come with you?" Maya offered. "No," he said after a moment. "I think this is something I need to do alone. But thank you." They sat at the kitchen table, eating cheesecake that neither of them really tasted, discussing possibilities. What if Jessica really had changed? What if she wanted to be part of Caleb's life again? How would that affect their new family dynamic? "Whatever happens," Maya said firmly, "I'm here, for both of you." Elijah looked at her across the table, This woman who had walked into their lives and embraced them both without reservation. "I love you," he said suddenly, the words slipping out before he could overthink them. Maya's eyes widened, then softened. "I love you too," she replied without hesitation. "And Caleb, both of you." It was the first time either of them had said those words aloud, though the feeling had been growing for weeks. Elijah reached across the table to take her hand, feeling an anchor in the midst of uncertain seas. The coffee shop was busy at noon the next day. Elijah arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where they could talk privately. He recognized Jessica the moment she walked in, though she looked different than he remembered. Her blonde hair was shorter now, cut in a sleek bob that framed her face. She wore minimal makeup and simple clothing, jeans and a blue blouse, unlike the fashionable outfits she'd favored when they were together. She looked older, more serious. She spotted him and walked over, her steps hesitant. "Hello, Elijah," she said. "Jessica." He didn't stand or offer a hug. "Have a seat." She sat across from him, hands clasped tightly on the table. "Thank you for meeting me. You said you wanted to talk, so talk." Jessica took a deep breath. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. What I did was unforgivable." "Then why are you here?" Elijah asked bluntly. "Because even if it's unforgivable, I have to try to make amends." She met his eyes directly. "I've been in therapy for 2 years, working through my issues. The truth is I wasn't ready to be a mother to any child, let alone a child with special needs. I was selfish and immature and afraid. And now? Now I understand what I threw away," Jessica said quietly. "I'm not asking to come back into your life, Elijah. That chapter is closed, but Caleb is my son too. I want a chance to know him, to be part of his life in whatever way you think is appropriate." Elijah studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "Why should I believe you won't just leave again when things get hard? Because they do get hard, Jessica. That's part of being a parent." "I know," she nodded. "I can't prove it to you with words, only with actions, over time. But I'm committed to doing the work." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "I've been learning about autism, taking courses on supporting children with special needs. I want to understand his world." Elijah reluctantly took the folder. Inside were certificates from parenting workshops, articles about autism, notes in Jessica's handwriting about sensory needs and communication strategies. "This is thorough," he admitted. "I'm serious about this, Elijah," Jessica said, leaning forward. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but Caleb deserves to know that his mother loves him, even if she made terrible mistakes." Elijah felt his resolve wavering. He'd expected excuses, perhaps even accusations, not this humble acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "How would this work?" he asked cautiously. "Practically speaking, however you want," Jessica said quickly. "Supervised visits at first, of course. Short ones on your terms. I don't want to disrupt his routine or confuse him. I just want a chance to be in his life." "He's different than you remember," Elijah warned. "He speaks more now, but still has limited verbal communication. He has very specific routines that can't be disrupted. He doesn't like to be touched without permission." Jessica nodded, taking in the information. "I want to learn who he is now, not who I expected him to be." Elijah sat back, conflicted. Part of him, the part that remembered Jessica walking out the door without looking back, wanted to refuse. But another part knew that someday Caleb would have questions about his mother. "I need to think about this," he said finally, "and I need to talk to some people first." "Of course," Jessica agreed readily. "Take all the time you need. Here's my number and where I'm staying. I'll be in town for at least a month." As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, Jessica hesitated, then asked, "How is he, really?" Elijah's expression softened slightly. "He's amazing, smart, observant, loving in his own way. He started drawing. He's really good at it." Jessica smiled, her eyes damp. "Thank you for telling me that, and thank you for raising him so well." She walked away, leaving Elijah with more questions than answers. He pulled out his phone and called Maya. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "Surprisingly okay," he admitted. "Can you come over tonight? I need your perspective." "I'll be there," she promised. That evening, after Caleb was asleep, Elijah and Maya sat on the living room couch while he recounted the meeting with Jessica. "She seems sincere," Maya said when he finished, "but it's natural to be cautious." "What would you do?" Elijah asked, valuing her opinion more than anyone's. Maya thought carefully before answering. "If I were in your shoes, I'd probably allow a trial visit. Very controlled, supervised by you. See how Caleb responds to her and how she responds to him. And if it goes well, Then maybe more visits, gradually, but I'd be clear about boundaries and expectations from the start. Maya took his hand. Elijah, whatever you decide, I'll support you. This is your and Caleb's journey. He squeezed her fingers gratefully. Our journey now. You're part of this family too. The word family hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. I like the sound of that, Maya said softly. Elijah pulled her close, drawing strength from her presence. I'm going to call her tomorrow. Set up a short visit this weekend, here at the house where Caleb feels safe. That sounds like a good plan, Maya agreed. Do you want me to be here? Elijah considered the question. Actually, yes, but not as support for me, though I always want that. I want Jessica to see that Caleb and I have moved forward, that we have someone in our lives who accepts us completely. Maya rested her head on his shoulder. Then I'll be here. Saturday arrived too quickly. Elijah had explained to Caleb, as simply as he could, that someone who knew him when he was a baby was coming to visit. She's your birth mother, he said carefully. Her name is Jessica. Caleb had listened with his usual serious expression, then asked, Will Maya be here too? Yes, buddy. Maya will be here too. That seemed to satisfy him, and he went back to arranging his cars in a perfect line across the coffee table. Jessica arrived precisely at the agreed time of 11 a.m. Elijah answered the door while Maya stayed in the living room with Caleb. Thank you for this, Jessica said, looking nervous. She held a small gift bag. I brought him something. Is that okay? That depends what it is, Elijah said cautiously. A book about trains. You mentioned he likes them. Elijah nodded. He does. That's thoughtful. He led her into the living room where Caleb was sitting cross-legged on the floor. Maya sat nearby on the couch, her presence calm and reassuring. Caleb, Elijah said gently, this is Jessica, the person I told you about. Caleb looked up briefly, then returned his attention to his cars. Hello, he said quietly. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Hello, Caleb, it's very nice to see you. She glanced at Maya questioningly. This is Maya, Elijah explained. She's an important part of our lives. Maya stood and offered her hand. Nice to meet you, Jessica. Jessica shook her hand, her expression unreadable. You too. The atmosphere was tense as Jessica carefully sat on the edge of the couch, not too close to Caleb. I like your cars, she said. You have them in a perfect line. Caleb nodded without looking up. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple? That's right, Jessica said, sounding impressed. You know your colors very well. Maya taught me, Caleb said. She knows all the colors. Jessica's smile faltered slightly as she glanced at Maya. That's wonderful. The visit continued for about an hour. Jessica tried her best, asking appropriate questions and respecting Caleb's space. She gave him the book, which he accepted with a polite thank you before setting it aside, a clear indication he wasn't particularly interested. Throughout the visit, Caleb kept looking to Maya for reassurance, especially when Jessica's questions became too much. Maya would subtly redirect the conversation or suggest a brief break, understanding his cues in a way that made Jessica's inexperience all the more apparent. As the visit was ending, Jessica turned to Elijah. Could I speak with you privately for a moment? Elijah nodded. Maya, would you stay with Caleb? Of course, Maya said with an encouraging smile. Elijah led Jessica to the kitchen, where she turned to him with a strained expression. You didn't tell me you were seeing someone, she said. I didn't think it was relevant to your request to see Caleb, Elijah replied evenly. How long has she been in his life? About 3 months. Jessica raised her eyebrows. That's not very long. Elijah felt a flare of irritation. Longer than you've been in his life recently. Jessica flinched but didn't argue. I just worry about him getting attached to people who might not stay. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on Elijah. Maya isn't going anywhere. You seem very sure of that. I am. His voice was firm. She loves Caleb exactly as he is. She's never once seen him as a burden or a disappointment. Jessica looked down. I deserved that. Elijah sighed, regretting his harshness. Look, Jessica, I'm willing to give you a chance to be in Caleb's life, but you need to understand that our family structure has changed. Maya is part of our lives now, and Caleb adores her. I can see that, Jessica said quietly. He looks at her the way he never looked at me. There was pain in her voice, but also resignation. Elijah felt a moment of sympathy for her. It's not a competition, he said more gently. Caleb has room in his life for many people who care about him. Jessica nodded. Can I see him again, maybe next weekend? Let me talk to him first, see how he feels. I'll call you. They returned to the living room, where Maya and Caleb were looking at a picture book together. Jessica said goodbye, receiving a small wave from Caleb in return. After she left, Elijah sat down beside Caleb. "What did you think about meeting Jessica?" Caleb considered the question with his usual seriousness. "She's okay," he said finally. "She talks a lot." Elijah smiled at the simple assessment. "Would you like to see her again sometime?" Caleb shrugged, neither enthusiastic nor opposed. "If Maya stays too." Maya, sitting nearby, looked surprised. "Of course I'll stay if you want me to, Caleb." Elijah's heart swelled with love for both of them. Whatever complications Jessica's return might bring, he knew one thing for certain. Maya was their constant, their safe harbor. The next few weeks fell into a new pattern. Jessica visited twice a week, never staying more than an hour. Caleb gradually became more comfortable with her, though he maintained a certain reserve that he never showed with Maya. Jessica, to her credit, was patient and respectful of boundaries. She learned Caleb's routines and preferences, never pushing him for physical affection or demanding his attention. She brought thoughtful gifts, art supplies, books about his special interests, a weighted blanket when she learned he sometimes had trouble sleeping. Maya was unfailingly kind during these visits, often serving as a bridge between Jessica and Caleb when communication faltered. She never showed jealousy or resentment, though Elijah wondered sometimes how she really felt about Jessica's presence in their lives. One evening after Jessica had left and Caleb was in bed, Elijah found Maya standing on the back porch, looking at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned back against him. "Just thinking about family, how it comes in all different forms. Are you okay with all of this?" he asked. Jessica being back in the picture, Maya turned in his arms to face him. "It's not about what I'm okay with. It's about what's best for Caleb. And what do you think that is?" She considered the question carefully. "I think having more people who love him is always a good thing, as long as those people are consistent and respectful of who he is." "You're amazing, you know that," Elijah said, shaking his head in wonder. "Most women would be threatened by their boyfriend's ex suddenly appearing." Maya smiled. "I'm not most women, remember. Besides, I'm secure in what we have. Jessica may be his biological mother, but..." She trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. "But what?" Elijah prompted. "Nothing," Maya said quickly. "It's not my place." Elijah cupped her face in his hands. "It is your place. You're part of this family now." "What were you going to say?" Maya took a deep breath. "Biology isn't what makes a mother. Love is. Showing up is. Being there for the hard parts, not just the easy ones." Elijah felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Exactly. And you've done that from day one." He kissed her then, trying to convey everything he felt for this remarkable woman who had changed their lives so completely. When they parted, Maya's eyes were shining. "I want you to know something, Elijah. No matter how this situation with Jessica evolves, I'm committed to you and Caleb. You're my family now. We feel the same way," Elijah assured her. "In fact," he hesitated, suddenly nervous. "What is it?" Maya asked. "I've been thinking about making it official," he said. "Us being a family." Maya's eyes widened. "Elijah, are you—" "Not proposing. Not yet," he clarified quickly. "But I wanted you to know that's where my heart is heading. I want a future with you, Maya. Caleb and I both do." Her smile was radiant. "That's where my heart is too." Later that night, as they lay together in Elijah's bed, Maya nestled against his chest. He felt a sense of contentment he'd never known before. Whatever challenges Jessica's return might bring, they would face them together. What he didn't know was that Jessica had plans of her own, plans that would test their newfound happiness in ways he couldn't imagine. A week later, Elijah was at work when his phone rang. It was Jessica. "Can we meet?" she asked without preamble. "Alone. It's important." Something in her voice set off alarm bells. "What's this about, Jessica?" "Please, Elijah. Just hear me out." He sighed. "Fine. When?" "Today, if possible. Lunch." They agreed to meet at a small cafe near his office. When he arrived, Jessica was already there, a manila envelope on the table in front of her. "What's going on?" he asked as he sat down. Jessica took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about Caleb, about what he needs. And I believe he needs his mother," she said firmly. "His real mother." Elijah felt his temper rising. "His real mother? The one who walked out on him when he was 4 years old?" "I made a terrible mistake," Jessica acknowledged. "But I'm his mother, Elijah. I gave birth to him. That bond can't be replaced by some woman you've been dating for a few months." "Maya has shown Caleb more love and understanding in 3 months than you did in 4 years, Elijah said coldly. Jessica's expression hardened. "I'm not here to argue about Maya. I'm here because I want to be part of Caleb's life in a meaningful way. Weekends, holidays, maybe even some weekdays eventually. That's moving way too fast, Elijah objected. Caleb needs stability, routine, which is why he needs both his parents, Jessica insisted, working together consistently. Elijah shook his head. We're not there yet, Jessica. Caleb is just getting to know you again. Jessica pushed the envelope toward him. Then you should see this. With a feeling of dread, Elijah opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of legal papers. His eyes scanned the first page, and he felt his blood run cold. You're filing for partial custody, he asked incredulously. Joint custody, Jessica corrected. I'm his mother, Elijah. I have rights. Rights you gave up when you walked out, he snapped, louder than he intended. Several cafe patrons turned to look at them. Jessica leaned forward, her voice low but intense. I made a mistake. A horrible one, but I'm trying to make it right. I've changed, I've learned. I want to be his mother again. And if the court doesn't grant you custody, Elijah challenged, will you disappear again? Or will you stay and be the consistent presence Caleb needs? Regardless of legal status, Jessica hesitated. And in that moment, Elijah saw the truth. This isn't about Caleb, he said slowly. This is about you, your guilt, your need to feel better about what you did. That's not fair, Jessica protested. Isn't it? Elijah gathered the papers and stuffed them back in the envelope. I'll have my lawyer look at these. But Jessica, think carefully about what you're doing. A custody battle will be hard on everyone, especially Caleb. I don't want a battle, Jessica said. I want compromise. Then you should have started with conversation, not legal papers. Elijah stood up, envelope in hand. I need to go. As he walked out of the cafe, his mind was racing. Would Jessica really go through with this? How would it affect Caleb? And what would Maya think, Maya? He needed to tell her right away. No secrets. That had always been their rule. He called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She was probably teaching. He sent a text instead. Need to talk ASAP. Jessica issue. Call when you can. Back at his office, Elijah could barely focus on work. He called his lawyer, who promised to review the papers immediately. Don't panic yet, the lawyer advised. She's been absent for years. Courts generally favor the stable, consistent parent in these situations. That was somewhat reassuring, but Elijah couldn't shake his worry. Not just about the legal threat, but about how this would affect their family. The family he, Caleb, and Maya were building together. His phone rang at 3:30. It was Maya. What happened? She asked, without preamble. Jessica is filing for joint custody, he said, the words still difficult to believe. There was a moment of silence before Maya responded, her voice carefully controlled. I see. When did she tell you this? At lunch today. She had the papers with her. Elijah ran a hand through his hair. My lawyer says not to worry too much yet, but you're worried anyway, Maya finished for him. Of course you are. I'm sorry to dump this on you. Don't apologize, Maya said firmly. This affects all of us. Are you going home now or staying at the office? Going home. I need to see Caleb. I'll meet you there, Maya promised. We'll figure this out together. Her words were exactly what he needed to hear. Together. Whatever happened, they would face it together. But as he drove home, a nagging worry persisted. Jessica had seemed so reasonable at first, so understanding of Caleb's needs. What had changed, and how far was she willing to go to get what she wanted? As he pulled into his driveway, Elijah's phone pinged with a new message from Jessica. I'm sorry about earlier. I don't want to fight, but I am serious about being in Caleb's life. Think about my proposal. It's better for everyone if we can work this out without courts. Elijah stared at the message, trying to read between the lines. Was it an olive branch or a threat? Either way, he knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to protect his son and the life they were building with Maya. What he didn't realize was that Jessica had one more card to play, one that would force him to make an impossible choice between the woman he loved and the mother of his child. The next few days were tense. Elijah consulted with his lawyer, who assured him that Jessica's case for joint custody was weak, given her 3-year absence. Still, the lawyer warned, courts sometimes favored biological parents, especially mothers who showed genuine reform. The good news, the lawyer said, is that Caleb is old enough that the judge will consider his preferences. Maya was Elijah's rock through it all. She listened to his fears without judgment, offered clear-headed advice, and most importantly, maintained a sense of normalcy for Caleb. If she was worried about her place in their lives being threatened, she never showed it. What matters is what's best for Caleb, she said repeatedly. Everything else is secondary. Jessica continued her visits with Caleb, acting as if nothing had changed. She was unfailingly polite to Maya, though there was a new coolness in her manner. Elijah watched their interactions carefully, wondering what Jessica's next move would be. He didn't have to wait long to find out. One evening, after Jessica's scheduled visit, she asked to speak with Elijah privately again. Maya took Caleb to the backyard to play, giving them space. "I've been thinking about our situation," Jessica began once they were alone in the living room. "And," Elijah prompted, wary, "and I'm willing to drop the custody filing on one condition." Elijah crossed his arms. "What condition?" Jessica took a deep breath. "I want you to break up with Maya." Elijah stared at her, sure he'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "I'm serious, Elijah." Jessica leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Think about it. Caleb needs stability. Two parents who are focused solely on him. Having your girlfriend involved just complicates things." "Maya is not just my girlfriend," Elijah said, his voice dangerously calm. "She's someone Caleb loves and trusts, someone who has never let him down." "Unlike me, you mean?" Jessica said bitterly. "I get it, I made mistakes, but I'm his mother, Elijah. No one can replace that bond." "No one is trying to," Elijah countered. "Maya has never tried to be Caleb's mother. She's just been herself, someone who loves him exactly as he is." Jessica's expression hardened. "So you won't consider it? For Caleb's sake? For Caleb's sake?" Elijah repeated incredulously. "How is taking away someone he loves and trusts for his sake? Because it would mean avoiding a messy court battle," Jessica said. "It would mean giving him the chance to have both his parents in his life, working together." Elijah shook his head, unable to believe what he was hearing. "That's emotional blackmail, Jessica, and it won't work." "Then I'll see you in court," she said, standing up. "My lawyer will be in touch." After she left, Elijah sat on the couch, his head in his hands. This was worse than he'd imagined. Jessica wasn't just fighting for custody, she was trying to dismantle the family he and Caleb had built with Maya. He heard the back door open, followed by Caleb's quick footsteps, heading upstairs to his room. Then Maya appeared in the doorway, her expression concerned. "That bad?" she asked softly. Elijah looked up at her, his heart full of love and regret. "Worse." He patted the couch beside him, and Maya sat down, taking his hand. "Tell me." So he did, recounting Jessica's ultimatum word for word. As he spoke, Maya's expression changed from concern to disbelief to quiet anger. "She can't be serious," Maya said when he finished. "Unfortunately, I think she is." Maya was quiet for a moment, absently tracing patterns on the back of his hand with her thumb. "She sees me as a threat," she said finally, "to her relationship with Caleb." "You're not a threat," Elijah insisted. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to us." "I know that," Maya said gently, "and you know that. But Jessica is looking at this through the lens of her own guilt and fear. She's afraid Caleb will love me more than her." Elijah squeezed her hand. "Well, her solution is completely unacceptable. I'm not choosing between you and avoiding a court battle. That's not even a choice." Maya's eyes were troubled. "But what if going to court hurts Caleb? You know how he struggles with change, with new environments. A custody battle would mean strangers asking him questions, maybe even testifying." The thought made Elijah's stomach churn. "I know. It's the last thing I want, but I can't let Jessica dictate our lives like this." "No," Maya agreed. "You can't." She was quiet again, staring into the distance with an expression Elijah couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" he asked, suddenly afraid. Maya turned to him, her eyes filled with determination and something else, resignation. "I'm thinking we need a third option," she said, "one that puts Caleb first." The next day, while Elijah was at work and Caleb was at school, Maya made a phone call. "Jessica, it's Maya. We need to talk." They agreed to meet at a cafe across town, neutral territory. When Maya arrived, Jessica was already there, looking surprised and wary. "Thank you for meeting me," Maya said, sitting down across from her. "I was curious," Jessica admitted. "What did you want to discuss?" Maya took a deep breath. "Caleb, what about him?" "I think we both want what's best for him," Maya said carefully, "but we have very different ideas of what that looks like." Jessica's expression was guarded. "I'm his mother." "Yes, you are," Maya acknowledged. "Nothing will ever change that. And I think Caleb deserves to have a relationship with you." Jessica looked surprised at this concession. "Elijah doesn't seem to agree." "Elijah is protective," Maya explained, "because he's seen how much Caleb was hurt when you left. He's afraid of it happening again." Jessica looked down at her coffee. "I'm not going to leave again." I believe you want to stay, Maya said gently, but the way you're going about this, threatening court, giving ultimatums, it's creating conflict that will ultimately hurt Caleb. I'm fighting for my son, Jessica said defensively. I understand that. But is fighting really what Caleb needs right now, or does he need adults who can work together peacefully? Jessica was quiet for a moment. What are you suggesting? Maya leaned forward. A compromise. One that allows you to be in Caleb's life consistently, but respects the family unit he's comfortable with. You mean your family unit? Jessica said pointedly. Yes, Maya admitted. The one that's been working for Caleb. The one where he feels safe and understood. Jessica sighed. So what's this compromise? Regular, consistent visitation. Maybe one weekend a month to start. Building to more as Caleb becomes more comfortable. Holiday time. No court, no lawyers, no forcing Caleb to choose. And you'd be okay with that? Jessica asked skeptically. This isn't about me, Maya said firmly. It's about Caleb. And yes, I'm okay with anything that makes his life better and more stable. Jessica studied her for a long moment. You really do love him, don't you? With all my heart, Maya said simply. And Elijah? Him too. Maya's voice softened. They're my family, Jessica. I'm not trying to replace you in Caleb's life. There's room for both of us to love him. Jessica's eyes filled with unexpected tears. I've made such a mess of everything. Not everything. Maya disagreed. You're here now. You're trying. That matters. Jessica wiped at her eyes. Why are you being so nice to me? After what I asked Elijah to do? Maya smiled sadly. Because holding on to anger doesn't help Caleb. And because I know what it's like to want to be part of his world so badly it hurts. There was a long silence as Jessica seemed to process everything. I need to think about this, she said finally. Of course, Maya nodded. Take all the time you need. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Jessica hesitated, then said, Thank you for loving them when I couldn't. Maya wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and walked away, hoping she'd done the right thing. Elijah was surprised when Maya told him about her meeting with Jessica. You did what? He asked, his voice rising. Maya, you didn't have to do that. This isn't your battle. Yes, it is, Maya said calmly. I love you and Caleb. That makes it my battle too. Elijah pulled her into a tight embrace. You're incredible, you know that, but Jessica could have been horrible to you. She wasn't, Maya said against his chest. She was just sad and scared. I think beneath all the legal threats, she just wants to be part of Caleb's life again. You're more forgiving than I am, Elijah murmured into her hair. Not more forgiving, Maya corrected. Just not as hurt by her. She didn't leave me. Elijah pulled back to look at her face. And you'd really be okay with her being in Caleb's life regularly, having him spend weekends with her? If that's what's best for Caleb, yes, Maya said without hesitation. But only if you are, and only if he is. Elijah shook his head in wonder. Just when I think I couldn't possibly love you more, Maya smiled up at him. I love you too, both of you. Enough to want everyone in Caleb's life to get along. They didn't hear from Jessica for 3 days. Then, on Thursday evening, she called. I've been thinking about what Maya said, she told Elijah. And she's right. Fighting isn't what Caleb needs. What are you saying? Elijah asked cautiously. I'm saying I'd like to try her compromise. Regular visitation, building up slowly. No courts, no lawyers. Elijah felt a weight lift from his shoulders. That sounds reasonable. I've already called my lawyer and told him to withdraw the custody filing, Jessica added. And Elijah, I'm sorry about what I said about Maya. It was wrong of me to try to come between you. Yes, it was, Elijah agreed, not quite ready to forgive that particular offense. She's good for Caleb, Jessica admitted. I can see that now. He lights up when she's around. Yes, he does, Elijah said softly. And she's good for you too, Jessica added. I'm glad you found someone who loves both of you the way you deserve. Elijah was silent for a moment, surprised by her sincerity. Thank you for saying that. After he hung up, he found Maya in the kitchen pretending not to eavesdrop while she prepared dinner. She's withdrawing the custody filing, he said, still hardly believing it. Maya's face broke into a radiant smile. That's wonderful. She agreed to your compromise, Elijah continued, wrapping his arms around Maya's waist from behind. Regular visitation, building slowly. I'm so glad, Maya said, leaning back against him. For Caleb's sake, for all our sakes, Elijah corrected. And it's all because of you. I just talked to her, Maya demurred. No, Elijah turned her to face him. You did what no one else could do. You saw past all the anger and hurt to what really mattered, Caleb's happiness. Maya shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. It's what anyone would do. It's what you did, Elijah insisted. Because you're you, extraordinary, compassionate, loving you. He kissed her then, pouring all his gratitude and love into the gesture. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. Move in with us, he said suddenly. Maya's eyes widened. What? Move in with us, Elijah repeated. Make it official. You're already here most of the time anyway. Are you sure? Maya asked. What about Caleb? How would he feel about it? Let's ask him, Elijah suggested. They found Caleb in his room, carefully arranging his growing collection of toy cars. The original ones Maya had given him now held places of honor in the center of his display. Caleb, Elijah said, sitting on the edge of the bed while Maya stood nearby. How would you feel if Maya came to live with us? If she was here all the time, not just some days? Caleb looked up, his expression thoughtful. Would she sleep here? Yes, Elijah nodded. She would have her own things here, like her books and clothes. And her paints? Caleb asked seriously. Maya smiled. Yes, and my paints. Caleb considered this for a moment, then nodded decisively. Good. Maya belongs here. The simple certainty in his voice brought tears to Maya's eyes. I think so too, Caleb. So it's settled, Elijah said, his own voice thick with emotion. Maya's moving in. When? Caleb wanted to know. Elijah looked at Maya questioningly. How about next weekend? She suggested. That would give me time to pack and talk to my landlord. Next weekend, Caleb repeated, adding it to his mental calendar. Maya comes home. Home. The word had never sounded so perfect. The following Saturday, Jessica had her first official visitation with Caleb, a trip to the zoo, just the two of them. Elijah was nervous, but Maya reminded him that Jessica had as much to lose as they did if she didn't follow through on her promises. She knows this is her chance to build a real relationship with Caleb, Maya said. She won't mess it up. She was right. Jessica returned Caleb exactly on time, and he seemed content, if tired, from the excitement. He told them about the elephants he'd seen and the ice cream Jessica had bought him. She said she's my birth mum, Caleb reported matter-of-factly. That means she had me in her tummy when I was a baby. That's right, Elijah confirmed, curious about where this was heading. But Maya is my heart mum, Caleb continued, as if stating an obvious fact. She didn't have me in her tummy, but she has me in her heart. Maya knelt down to his level, her eyes shining with tears. That's exactly right, Caleb. You're in my heart. Always. Caleb nodded, satisfied that everyone understood, then went to line up his cars, his standard activity after any new experience. Elijah wrapped an arm around Maya's shoulders. Heart mum, he repeated softly. He came up with that on his own? Maya nodded, too moved to speak. Wise kid, Elijah said with a smile. The next day they moved Maya's belongings into the house. It didn't take long. She lived simply, and had already accumulated quite a few things at their place. Caleb helped in his own way, carefully carrying Maya's art supplies to the spare room they'd cleared out to be her studio. As the day ended, they sat together on the back porch swing, Elijah, Maya, and Caleb between them. The evening was peaceful, the first stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Are you happy, buddy? Elijah asked his son. Caleb nodded, his eyes on the sky. Yes, everyone is where they should be. Maya caught Elijah's eye over Caleb's head, her smile radiant in the fading light. She mouthed the words, I love you, and Elijah felt his heart swell with gratitude and joy. Everyone was indeed where they should be. 6 months later, Elijah stood in his classroom at the local elementary school surveying his handiwork. The room was transformed with twinkling lights, handmade paper flowers, and colorful student artwork covering the walls. In the center stood an easel, with a large canvas still blank waiting. It was Maya's last day as a preschool teacher. On Monday, she would start her new position as the elementary school's art teacher, a job that would allow her to be in the same building as Caleb when he started first grade in the fall. The door opened and Caleb peeked in. Is it ready, Dad? Almost, Elijah said, adjusting one last light. Is Maya here? Caleb nodded seriously. Jessica brought her. They're talking in the hall. Elijah raised his eyebrows at that. Over the past months, Jessica had proven her commitment to being part of Caleb's life. She never missed a visitation, always returned him on time, and had even started attending his therapy sessions to better understand his needs. Gradually, a cautious respect had developed between her and Maya, not quite friendship, but a peaceful coexistence centered around their love for Caleb. What are they talking about? Elijah asked curiously. Caleb shrugged. Girl stuff, I think. Jessica was showing Maya her new ring. She's getting married. This was news to Elijah. Really? That's great. To Mr. David, Caleb added. My therapist. He makes her laugh. Elijah smiled at his son's observation. Jessica had mentioned she was dating someone new, but he hadn't realized it was serious, or that it was Caleb's therapist, a kind man who specialized in working with children on the spectrum. Are you okay with that, buddy? He asked. Caleb nodded. Mr. David is nice. He listens to me, and he makes Jessica happy so she doesn't worry so much. Out of the mouths of babes, Elijah thought. Okay, time to get Maya, he said, checking that everything was perfect. Remember the plan? Caleb nodded solemnly. I tell Maya I made something special for her in the art room. Then I bring her here. Perfect, Elijah said, handing him a small velvet box. And you give her this when I nod, right? Caleb took the box carefully. Right. It's a very important job. The most important, Elijah agreed, his heart racing with anticipation. Caleb disappeared, and a few minutes later, Elijah heard Maya's voice in the hallway. So, what is this special project you've been working on, Caleb? It's in here, Caleb's voice replied. You have to see it. The door opened, and Maya stepped in, Caleb guiding her by the hand. She stopped in surprise, taking in the transformed classroom with wide eyes. What is all this? She asked, turning in a slow circle. Elijah stepped forward, suddenly nervous despite all his planning. This is where we first met, remember? Not this exact room, but one just like it, when you came for your interview for the art teacher position. Maya smiled. I remember. You were on the hiring committee. I knew from the moment you walked in, Elijah said softly. There was something special about you. The way you talked about teaching, about connecting with children, your passion for art as a form of expression. I was so nervous that day, Maya admitted. I wanted the job so badly. And now it's yours, Elijah said, taking her hands in his. Starting Monday, this is your classroom. Maya looked around again, noticing the student artwork for the first time. Did your students make all this? With a little help, Elijah nodded. They know how special you are too. He guided her to the center of the room, where the blank canvas stood on the easel. But there's one piece missing. What's that? Maya asked. Elijah glanced at Caleb, who stepped forward, still holding the velvet box carefully. This, he said, looking to his father for confirmation. Elijah nodded, and Caleb presented the box to Maya. For me? She asked, her voice catching as she began to understand. Caleb nodded. From both of us. With trembling fingers, Maya opened the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. Elijah took a deep breath and dropped to one knee. Maya Lawrence, you walked into our lives and brought color to a world that had started to fade. You never flinched. Not at Caleb's diagnosis, not at his meltdowns, not at the complicated situation with Jessica. You saw us for who we are and loved us anyway. Maya's eyes filled with tears as Elijah continued. You're already part of our family in every way that matters, but we'd like to make it official. He looked up at her, his heart in his eyes. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Caleb's heart mom forever? Maya was crying now, joy radiating from her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, with all my heart. Elijah stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that held all the promises of their future together. A small hand tugged at Maya's dress. Does this mean you'll be my mom for real? Caleb asked, his expression serious. Maya knelt down to his level, as she had done from the very first day. I'll be your heart mom for real, yes, if that's okay with you. Caleb nodded solemnly. It's very okay. Then he did something he rarely did. He initiated a hug, wrapping his arms around Maya's neck. I love you, heart mom, he whispered. I love you too, Caleb, Maya replied, holding him close, her eyes meeting Elijah's over his head. In that moment, standing in a classroom decorated with paper flowers and twinkling lights, surrounded by the artwork of children who would soon be hers to teach, Maya knew she had found her place in the world. With a man who loved her completely and a child who had claimed her heart from the very beginning, Elijah watched them, his fiancée and his son, and felt a sense of peace he'd never known before. From the day Maya had walked into that restaurant and crouched down to speak to Caleb, their lives had been changing for the better. She hadn't flinched then, and she hadn't flinched since. Not at the challenges, not at the complications, not at the hard parts of loving a child with special needs. She had simply loved them exactly as they were, and that, Elijah knew, was the greatest gift of all. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Maya walked down the aisle toward Elijah. who waited for her with tears in his eyes and a heart full of love. Beside him stood Caleb, solemn and proud in his little suit, carefully holding the rings on a special pillow he had decorated himself. In the front row sat Jessica and her new husband David, who had become unexpected allies in creating a stable, loving, extended family for Caleb. Behind them were Maya's parents, Elijah's cousin Angela, who took full credit for the matchmaking, and rows of friends and colleagues who had supported their journey. As Maya reached them, Caleb surprised everyone by stepping forward and taking her hand. "You look beautiful, Heart Mom," he said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. A collective awe rippled through the guests as Maya knelt down for a quick hug before taking her place beside Elijah. The ceremony was simple and beautiful, with vows that acknowledged the unique path that had brought them together. When it was time for the rings, Caleb performed his duty perfectly, his face serious with concentration. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said with a smile. "You may kiss the bride." As Elijah leaned in to kiss Maya, sealing their vows and their future, Caleb clapped his hands in rare, uninhibited joy. Later at the reception, Elijah pulled Maya away from the crowd for a moment of quiet. "Happy?" he asked, though her radiant smile already told him the answer. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning against him. "All because of one blind date where you brought your son to test me." Elijah laughed softly. "Best decision I ever made." Maya looked across the room to where Caleb was showing his grandparents his newest drawing, a colorful representation of their family, with Maya, Elijah, and himself in the center, surrounded by Jessica, David, and all the other important people in their lives. "He's amazing," she said. "You both are. Thank you for letting me be part of your story." Elijah pulled her closer. "Thank you for not flinching when the story got complicated." Maya looked up at him, her eyes reflecting all the love in her heart. "I never will." And she never did. Through all the years that followed, the joys and challenges, the milestones and setbacks, the growth and change, Maya remained steadfast. The woman who didn't flinch at autism, at ex-wives, at meltdowns, or at the messy, beautiful complexity of blended families. The woman who brought color to their world and helped them see the masterpiece that had been waiting to be painted all along. The end.